I'm gonna have a go at making a bow drill set out of Lantana, which is a pretty common invasive weed species in Australia, so there's definitely no shortage of it. And it is a soft wood. If you run your fingernail along it, you can leave grooves in it with just your fingernail. I at least refer to this as the fingernail test. Basically, testing how soft the wood is by trying to scratch it, going by running your fingernail along it. And from that you can judge its softness and whether or not you want to attempt to fire by friction with it. You might recognize this piece of wood as the piece of Lantana that I turned into a cookie survival bow, which at this point in time was definitely my favorite improvised bow. Now, we've got to get the socket started by making a divot. Now, some people put their knife in and start twisting it. No. Some knives are strong enough to get away with that. I'm not going to risk it. What I do is a method that's a lot kinder to your knife's tip, because yeah, if you've got a knife you really like, you probably do not want to snap the tip off of it. So what I do is I go in at a steep angle and I carve around in a circle. I go in a wide circle. No, I don't do it all at once. I like to break it up and just try and get a divot started. And we just want to get that divot big enough so that when we get our spindle, it won't pop out when we start to spin it. We just need a small depression or divot that we can spin our spindle in so that the spindle will burn the socket into the wood. So we're not trying to carve the socket, we just need a depression that the spindle will not pop out of once we start spinning it to burn the actual socket in. So I've got my little divot in here, and the piece of Lantana that I wanted to use for a spindle seemed to be still a bit green, so I decided to go with a piece of Xanafluria stem. So I've carved it a bit thinner on top and carved it on the bottom. Normally I would have the top going to a thin point, but Xanafluria has a pithy center, so it would just get crushed instantly anyway. Oh well. And for my bearing block, I'm going to have a go at using one of these oyster shells. I've used smaller ones before and had them really heat up, so I want to see how well this larger one goes. So what I've got to do now is I've got to start spinning that in so that it will burn a hole into the baseboard of Lantana, and this will just give us our socket so that we can then put the groove in. I just want to make sure I've got a nice clear area to work with. I wouldn't want to put it there because that's in a ditch, and when I start spinning it we run into that. So I've got myself a flat hard surface that's clear on either side. I'm going to try and avoid using the kneeling method today. I'm just going to go for a more traditional method today. Well, I've got a notch forming, but that shell is definitely heating up. I've only ever made a fire by friction with a shell once, and yes, it really did burn, but getting the fire going was more important than avoiding blisters that day. Well, it's smoking, which is a good sign. Now moving it around, it doesn't seem to want to pop out too easily. That should hopefully be deep enough for us to put our knock into it now. Gotta cut into the baseboard so that there's a point for the dust to collect for when we're actually making our coal or our ember to make a fire. I can carve it out with a knife, but having a multi-tool with a saw on it makes it so much easier. Okay, so I've carved my notch. It goes out like a V that way and that way, so that when I lift it up, it should hopefully not hold on to the ember. It should just lift away freely. I've also got a piece of paperbark here to collect the powder and hopefully the ember. Going slow just to build up heat. Well, if that happens, actually pretty normal. Smoking by itself. Alright, we have an ember. Let's see if we can tease it from the board. Don't know how well you can see that burning. It's definitely glowing red to me. Ooh. So that was definitely the easiest ember I have ever gotten through fire by friction. So I'm definitely going to be holding on to this set, and I reckon this oyster shell worked pretty alright. Don't know how long it's going to last though. Some of the previous ones that I've used start to disintegrate, and hopefully I can start doing some more friction fires.
I'm gonna go hide these.